As we all live longer, age really is just a number. But retirement is so much more than one. Your Metro Detroit Edward Jones financial advisors want to know what you want out of your retirement, so we can help get you there. Call us toll-free at 866-975-8655. Again, that's 866-975-8655 to schedule an appointment. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit. It is Wednesday, March 29th, 2023. We have a lot of fresh topics to talk with you about. I am Jer Stays, and across from me in the studio, it's not Friday. It's Mr. Friday on a Wednesday. What are you doing here, sir? You are early.
I'm 2 days early, and not only that, it is early in the day. So I came over here to the studio to chat with you. Like you said, we've got a couple fun, interesting things to talk about, but the big headline, the siren going off is the news of the District Detroit deal passing with City Council 8-1. So I think we got to get into that.
And we will, but first, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a pour over from Black Coffee Cafe, which I saw you, Jerry. I'm going to give you the inspiration for me stopping there on my way over here. I always like to think of what are some local coffee shops in the place where I'm going, and I'm usually about towning. And I saw that you had posted about this place. It's in your neighborhood, in your hood, in the North End.
Yeah.
A really cool little strip there. There's several different businesses. There's a barber shop I saw. So a little bit of an exploration for me. But I got a pour over from Black Coffee Cafe, which was fantastic. My only downside with pour overs,
and this isn't cafe specific, because there is a downside to pour overs.
There is a downside to pour overs. I am such a basic tastes coffee guy. I'm like, black coffee, it doesn't need to be fancy. It doesn't need to be third wave or whatever. So for me, I like a quick cup. I'm about towning, Jer. So I'm always moving around. I usually don't have time to sit for 10 minutes.
You're who Starbucks was made for.
No, well, don't say that. I don't know, Jerry. I'm not a Starbucks. Don't put that on me. I'm not a Starbucks guy. I'm still a small local coffee guy. I just love when there's a drip coffee, so I can just run in, grab a coffee, dip out.
I remember an old friend of mine who lived in the Eastern Market had this idea of the A line, that kind of person who does that every day. I need to be in and out in 2 minutes, and then the B line. The B line is for more of, it's okay for a pour over. We can have vibes. We're going to sit with it for a while. I was recently getting coffee in the neighborhood too, and my drink is something a little different.
What do you got, Jared? What else is in the neighborhood? I'm interested to hear.
So the congregation is expanding out some of their drinks, and one of the ones that I enjoyed, very different, is an orange spice espresso tonic.
Oh, God. I got turned on to espresso tonics about a year and a half ago in the summer. I was in Grand Rapids, and I experienced my first espresso tonic, and it was delightful. So we've got some local ones, and now we've got a little bit of a twist on it. That sounds really good.
So we're almost to the level of a craft mocktail, but to go and for $6.
Don't call it a mocktail. You know how I feel about that, Jared. Don't call it a mocktail. That just sounds like a delightful coffee drink.
As we teased at the beginning of the show, there are some stories to talk about. The biggest story is this District Detroit thing. I will just say that I think a lot of people who were watching this were a little surprised at the near unanimity of this. Now, it was 8-1 for the main vote, and then the other things going forward, a lot of them were 9-0 with this, with Detroit City Council. The only no vote was Mary Sheffield, and I thought it was interesting. A couple things politically. One, Mary Sheffield was very clear in a statement sent to the press that she is pro-business, pro-development, all those things, right? Number one. Number two, a lot of people voted yes on this thing that politically they didn't need to in order for it to pass, right? There are some members on that council that I thought, you know what? If they knew it was going to pass, they can go ahead and make their vote and they'll still keep going. But no, the thing ended up completely unanimous, which I think stunned some watchers. And we're going to get to some listener reactions that came in as well from text and Instagram. But what were your thoughts on that vote?
Yeah, I think this was surprising, not only for people just kind of observing it, but insiders too. And I spoke with some people who were actually in that, in the meeting, who kind of watched it, who follow along. I spoke with some people who were kind of part of the development deal, kind of on the different development entity sides. it was kind of surprising to get 8-1, and especially after all the hullabaloo. For those, I kind of followed along live tweets. Somebody was doing kind of live tweeting of the council meeting. You can watch it now. There was a lot of back and forth. It was crazy. Jared,
for months.
it was a crazy scene. They were literally rewriting certain aspects of the agreement during the council meeting. The developers were going back and writing it, and the council would go, can we include this? Can we include this? Can we change this language? So somebody I spoke with who is a developer was like, wow, this was kind of one of the wildest council meetings I've seen on development projects. And after all that, after all of the back and forth and the different exclamations and the fine tuning of things, 8-1, unbelievable. Like you said, people, council members who publicly had been opposed to things like this and had negative quotes out there, negative feelings out there on District Detroit, Ilitch's, ended up voting for it. And I don't know who we want to give credit to, Jerry, and I don't know how into the weeds we want to get on this, but I think there's a couple factors at play. And so, I'll jump into it. I think the most broad thing was, I think they understand that this actually is, and I know this is controversial, but we're going to say a lot of controversial things here.
Unpopular opinions.
8 other council members agree with me that this is...
And one pretty much agrees with you.
That this is overall a positive for the city of Detroit, the whole city of Detroit, because it will bring jobs, it will bring additional investment, it will bring tax income. It's going to help the city of Detroit on a broad scale basis. So this is a net positive. And again, I don't think it's controversial because, again, almost all council members agree with me. Pretty much all of them do. So we can start there and say, I think the sentiment among council was, if not this isn't going to happen again. There's no chance that, these parking lots will stay parking lots.
Ilitch owns his land. However he got it, however that family got it, however. And the other side is you put in Ross into this picture and you've got somebody who has more of a track record. I have some skepticism and I still have some questions about the overall plan. But let's first walk through kind of the money part. I feel like this kind of thing, I get a lot of feedback from listeners that they don't quite grok how this goes together. There's a lot of feeling of 800 million or however 100 million.
616 million. That's
616 million. And the money that goes from, say, state level, city sources, all that stuff. Well, first off, I think we need to discuss the idea that this is not money. So this is rebates for the most part. And in fact, I think almost for the whole part. And so it's not like someone's writing them a check, and so it's not like this money exists. This money doesn't exist. That's the weird thing about this, and I know that's really hard. It took me a couple of years to figure this out. But it's not like you're taking whatever 100 millions you put in and you can write a check for something else.
That's not happening. Related or Ilitch's is not getting a check for $616 million.
Right, because this is rebates on spend. This is rebates on things that are happening that they say, if but for, it would not occur. Now, some will have arguments. Some will have a very legitimate argument that we shouldn't do incentives. That's, to me, a very intellectually correct argument. If you're someone who says, you know what, whether it's the Ilitch's or anyone, I don't like incentives. That's an intellectually honest argument. I will 100% take that. But with this, it's tough because I understand the skepticism that people have. And a lot of the feedback, and we'll get into some of the feedback later, was if it wasn't the Ilitch's, I trusted it more. That's one big thing.
But what if I told you, which is factual, that the majority kind of ownership of this development is the related companies, the largest real estate developer in the country, talking, some of the largest projects in the country. What if I told you that they are really in charge of this project?
And that's what I think is part of what pushed this over the line, because when you heard the council, they were skeptical about the Ilitch's. They talked about the track record, all those things. The other part of this is the DDA. And I found something interesting that Twitter and Instagram and Facebook all have different vibes and very different things. When you start running a thing like we do that goes across social bubbles, it's really easy within your social bubble to think everybody agrees with you. This one, our audience challenges my thinking constantly. And that's one of the things I love about it, is that to see a cross-section of things are. And then also just being out there in the streets, talking to neighbors. One tie together is DDA, what is this? How does this work? And I want to talk to you for a second because you are on a DDA. You're not on this DDA, but you are on a smaller DDA.
Yes, a much smaller DDA in my hometown, let's say. And I sit on the DDA, and it functions the same way. I mean, DDAs are set up to function in the same way. It's tax captures from businesses in a particular area. So let's say a West Dearborn, for instance. Basically, you draw a map on what you consider downtown West Dearborn. Literally just draw a line, and every business within that, usually it's your main commercial district, and every business in that, there's a tax capture. And that money funds the DDA, and also the DDA then kind of divvies that tax capture back out for economic development.
So the criticism is that a net loss to the city that it's within?
It is not a net loss to the city.
And why not?
Because that tax before would not be captured. It wouldn't go to Wayne County. It wouldn't go to the city itself. It's captured only by the DDA, by this mechanism to fund economic development.
So is it over and above?
It's a portion of, yes. It's
okay.
You don't notice as a business owner, you don't notice you're paying into the DDA. As as a resident, you wouldn't notice this at all. It's just how when you start to slice the pie, that slice then has multiple slices to it.
Well, it gets even more complicated in the city of Detroit, where the majority of taxes that come from income tax, and so a downtown development authority in a lot of ways can help encourage more people to work there, and then they end up paying a percentage that then the city doesn't have to pay as much resources on.
Right. So if you want to think about it like this, and again, we are not the necessary experts on the numbers part of it, but we know enough, I think, to have a conversation and to help people understand this. So, you take, for instance, the tax capture, 4.5% in taxes, okay? Half of that the state would capture, half of that the city would capture, and that's your different tax rates. In this case, the money that the state would capture is going back to the developers, Illich's and the related companies for this project. So it's a tax capture over 35 years that will be funded by the people who live in these apartments that are being built, the people who work in these office buildings that are being built. Anyone who lives in the city of Detroit or works in the city of Detroit knows you pay a city income tax. You pay 2.4%, I think, 1.2 just for living, 1.2 for working, 2.4 overall.
Reversed, yeah.
So you pay these taxes. Those are that's what's getting captured. Taxes from the hotels that are going to be built. So again, the cynics will say, well, if nothing gets built, they're not going to get any of that money. That's exactly the point. They need to build this to actually capture the money. If they don't build it, they don't get the money. And this is over 35 years. So again,
it's kind of like a rebate or a mechanism as opposed to saying the city of Detroit writing a check.
Right, exactly. That's what we want to get away from. This is not the city of Detroit writing a check. And here's the final thing on the DDA, Jer, is just like a West Dearborn DDA, for instance, you cannot fund other things with the DDA dollars. It can't go to the schools. It can't go to parks. That money has to be reinvested and put back into the downtown. In any downtown, whatever the DDA is, that money stays in the DDA. It can't be taken by the county, can't be taken by the state. It is for use, the DDA, for economic development purposes, for business improvement, for it has to stay. I
have heard some people saying, hey, we should abolish the DDA. That would be very technically difficult. And there are a lot of things the DDA does that people don't realize, because I know that there are a level of services that the city just can't provide for certain things. Now, I know, again, that's something where that's a whole different conversation for a whole show.
Yeah, to me, that's like talking about like a small company and saying, well, we shouldn't have an IT department. We'll just abolish the IT department. Everyone can just fix their own computers and figure it out. The DDA serves a very important purpose in any downtown, and to just abolish them means that someone else is going to have to do all of the work. It doesn't just go somewhere else. Someone has to pick that up, and so I think that's a preposterous idea.
One of the lessons that I take away from this is the idea that you'll see online a lot of people saying eat the rich, but from my experience being in Detroit, in reality, on the ground, I think there's a lot of people who want to eat, and there's a lot of people who want to be rich. I think one of the biggest misnomers people who are new to the city make is thinking that this is a progressive town. It may vote Democratic, but it is not progressive.
Sure, you're wading into some muddy waters here. You're gonna get some listener feedback.
Oh, I don't. Look. If you want that kind of community, I feel like places like Ferndale and such are much more aligned to you. Let's get some listener feedback here. I got a bunch of it in the last day, and I'm just gonna run through it. And if you got any hot takes on them, go ahead and tell me. Finally, it's done. I don't like it's the Illich's, but we need development. Detroit already moves too slow with new stuff. I live in the city. This is the kind of project we need. It sucks that it had to be the Illich's, but Ross gives me faith it'll get done. Boo. That was that. I respect a good boo, right? Only wish we had a better alternative. I'm really hoping no more offices are built. Office culture needs to die a quick and sudden death. Now, I mean, that's part of the feedback with some of the stuff you've done on the show. There's a lot of people who are like, yeah, I don't want to go back, or the hybrid thing is the way to go. I will say, one criticism I definitely have of this, I think that there are too many offices in this plan. I think they're going to find themselves having to change. I know that a lot of business leaders are like, the beatings will continue until you return to work, but there is definitely like a difference there in culture.
I respect that, Jer. I don't disagree with you now as we sit here, but I think, again, we are talking about a project that like we talked about, the tax capture, all this is 35 years. Consider this a 35-year plan, even if you want to half that and say this is a 15-year plan. As we sit here, we talk about office culture and, how offices are, and we're still kind of coming out of COVID. We're in the kind of this post-COVID world. I think the developers are thinking 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years ahead and saying, you know what? I know you don't think we're going to need all this office now because it seems silly to build out office space, but 15 years from now in downtown Detroit, you're going to want more office space, and it's going to be there.
Yeah, I think we can agree to disagree on this. A couple people mentioned that they really hope that something gets built on the parking lot in front of Comerica Park. If you dig into the paperwork on this, that is actually the first thing that's going to be built.
Done.
Like, that's going to be the first thing when you go to a Tigers game. And we talked about this with Robin Runyon. It's going to be a different vibe because at some point you're going to see a tall old building rising over the top of Comerica Park.
And I think that's important. And I don't know I don't know how intentional it was, but that's a huge PR boom because what is the thing that Ilitches are constantly beat up for? And rightfully so in most cases. Parking lots. Everything they own is a parking lot. Well, you know what?
Landscaped and fenced and lighted.
But if you start seeing vertical construction and building a building on top of parking lots, they can point to that and say, look at that. We're doing it.
Are we still going vertical? Are we going vertical?
We're building. We're building up. We're going vertical. So seeing that, I think, will be actually a great PR for them, for all the people who are coming to Comerica. And, look, it's a smart play for the Ilitches because you know what? By the time, basically, you've got the Columbia Street now, that Columbia Street development with like Frida Beditos and the M-Den and the JoJo Shake Bar and all that stuff. You park in an Ilitch parking lot over there in, near Bookies. You walk through Columbia Street, you start spending money. Ding, 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 start spending money. Then you're going to walk through their new development. That's going to be another kind of shed, they're calling it, type of situation. More vendors, more businesses. Ding, 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 you're spending money. By the time you get to Comerica to walk into the game or concert, you're $150 in the hole already.
A couple more comments. Garbage and unearned. The renderings keep being value engineered as well. I'm still feeling like I'll believe it when I see it with the Ilitches. And then finally, the wasted time back and forth is so ridiculous. Finally, Detroit needs to build. For me, I just hope that there is accountability with all of the community benefits and delivering this. Clearly, to me, this was always going to happen. I feel like there was a little bit of a kabuki theater of back and forth. I feel like the people read the room. You don't see elected bodies go unanimous or almost unanimous. If there was huge public outcry to this, like if this was truly something, you would have seen more. There are council members who would lose no skin in the game to vote no, and they still voted yes.
Yeah, I think, again, this is an 8-1 vote, so we're not even talking about something that was that controversial in the end. I think, those council members realized, this is my opinion, editorializing, but I think they realized that overall this is a net positive for the city. It's going to provide jobs. We didn't even get into necessarily kind of the details on that, but there is a stipulation with all these types of projects that you need to hire at least 51% Detroiters. Is that going to happen?
Nope.
It's not going to happen. Well, at the very least, they're going to it's probably going to end up being 30. I think the DEGC kind of said it might end up being more like 30%.
There's only so much available work. And then you got the other question that a lot of people are just not signing up to do that kind of work. And I've interviewed people from the unions and from trade areas. They tell me there's nowhere near enough people applying and trying to be trained to replace the people retiring. They are basically in a crisis with that. And that is across the region.
So they're trying to remedy that. And so if they don't get to 51%, then they are basically paying fines. They're consistently fined on a basically scale, and they have to pay into a training fund for Detroiters to get skilled jobs. So there is a positive outcome of that. And then also, you've got a $100 million community benefits agreement that'll put money into parks, into developing that area, into affordable housing. So there are some good things that will come out of this from a community development standpoint that should benefit residents of the surrounding area.
Now, finally, I want to mention this one because you worked at this facility there is the word that the Lions are thinking about moving their headquarters from Allen Park to somewhere else in Metro Detroit. They want to create a place that has more modern facilities. It's been about 20 years now, and they're looking at doing a 15,000 seat kind of facility for that so that the public can come in. What are your thoughts about Allen Park? What are your thoughts about moving? I know it's close to your heart and close to your house.
Well, actually, I mean, they always say Allen Park, but the thing is, the address is in Allen Park, but most of that property is in Dearborn. So it might as well be
Actually,
say Allen Park, say Dearborn, doesn't matter. I would be sad to see it go. Obviously, I worked there, like you said, I interned there. God, I don't even want to say how long ago, but between 15 and 20 years ago. I was very, very young, and it would suck to see him go. And my first reaction, frankly, is there's tons of space over there. There's like abandoned office parks aplenty. So
it's owning those though.
Do
they own them?
Yeah. I mean, I would. In a perfect world, Jer, I get why they want bigger. I get why they want that to be a showcase. You could come watch the team. You could have games there. It could be a multi-purpose. I totally get it. I hope that they stay close because I think that between Dearborn and Allen Park, there is tons of land to use. I don't know where else they would go. I mean, do you go into like a much more rural environment where you just have lots of land, but then that feels so separate.
Well, there's lots of underdeveloped. Well, that would be interesting. Contiguous land is hard to put together, but it's something that would be a signature thing for the city, and it would actually keep more of those incomes in the city of Detroit, right? Like that would be a big boon for the city because, you know, when you're making those kind of millions of dollars, that would end up being a net benefit in a lot of ways. You know, these kind of facilities, it's going to be, you know, probably less than $100 million. It's a thing that's not going to probably have a lot of incentives unless it's like a brownfield thing to repair the land. I would like to see it closer to the center core. I would like to see it in the city. I would like to see it or see it somewhere in the inner suburbs. I don't think it belongs out in the green field just because I want it to be accessible to everybody. I would like it to be kind of in the middle where people will go. The other thing, and I have no sources for this, and I am talking out of my tail, but a new 15,000 person venue sounds like something another team needs at some point.
Right? A team very close to the Daily Detroit Hearts, right?
Yeah, I have no information on this, but my first thought was a lot of USL championship teams have stadiums of that size or a little smaller. And I love Keyworth, and I don't ever want to leave Keyworth. Like in my perfect world, I would rebuild Keyworth till the end of time. But I'm also very practical about a new facility. And if you think about utilizing something, you know, for more of the year, that would be a very interesting play to me. Like if you're in a multi-purpose or bring in colleges, bring in different things. Like I hope it's not just used for the Lions if they're going to go that big.
It would be smart too. I mean, if you're going to spend that much money, you probably want to, again, getting back to the development talk, it all comes full circle. If you're going to spend that amount of money, which again, it's private here. So the Lions are probably investing this money into, which is the Ford family. If you're going to invest in this, you probably want to do something where you can actually get some money back, but you can use it as a multi-purpose, but you can share the cost, things like that. Because otherwise that 15,000 seat stadium is going to sit pretty dormant because let's be honest, you know, the Lions use it as a practice facility, but it's not like a year-round use case at all.
Right. I mean, there's headquarters offices and things there.
Yeah, for offices, it's year-round. Let me be clear.
Yeah.
For offices, it'd be year-round. But for like that 15,000 seat stadium, which would be the bulk of the cost, that needs more use.
I would love to see something happen with that lot of that old hospital in Southwest Detroit in view of the train station. Imagine the views and vistas on TV if you could look over and see that Ford Mobility headquarters and see downtown Detroit. Whether it's that or something, that's one area, like every time I go by that hospital, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. There isn't much architectural value to it. It's been run down. I would love to see something new go into that spot.
You're advocating for the Fords buying more Corktown properties, Jer?
I'm not advocating.
My goodness.
I'm just thinking. And
no, I like it.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. dailydetroit@gmail.com. All right, we are done for today. Thank you so much for listening. Devon O'Reilly, thank you so much for coming into the studio and doing very fresh podcasting, the freshest of podcasting that you can get.
As fresh as this pour over in my hand, Jer. It was great to talk to you. I know we're going to get some feedback from this. This will not be the last time we talk about it, but it was great to cover this kind of, like you said, hot and fresh.
All right. Well, with that, I'm Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.